Welcome. Thank you all for coming tonight to the Cockrell School of Engineering College Tuition Budget Advisory Student Forum. My name is Roberto Biden, and I'm the President of the Student Engineering Council and Chair of the Engineering CTBAC. And the formation of the College Tuition Budget Advisory Committee was legislated by the Senate and College Councils almost exactly a year ago. And SEC followed up by creating the committee in the Cockrell School of Engineering. This committee is comprised of students whose role will be to represent engineering students on campus by gathering information and representing students on tuition and budget priorities. This committee will identify student priorities, recommend changes in tuition, and offer advice on budget. There are 5 primary functions of the College Tuition Budget Advisory Committee. Discuss college-level academic priorities. 2. Recommend tuition increases as are necessary to meet college-level academic priorities. 3. Consider allocation of budget resources within the college necessary to achieve college-level academic policies. 4. Solicit feedback from students, faculty, and staff. 5. Work with other CTBACs to collect input from members of the university community about university-wide budgetary recommendations and changes. With budget cuts occurring in almost every public university in the state of Texas, student participation and inclusion in the budget tuition process becomes more and more important. Tonight, we students have a very unique opportunity to be directly involved in this process. We will have a chance to listen, ask questions, and provide feedback on a new proposed direction for the Cockrell School. It is my pleasure to introduce Dean Gregory Fenvis and Associate Dean for Academic Affairs, Gerald Spitel, who have taken the time out of their busy schedules to give students a financial briefing of the Cockrell School of Engineering.
Well, thank you, Roberto. Thanks for your leadership in SEC. Can everybody hear me? So you guys want to keep down because I don't have to shout as loudly. Can you pick me up on your microphone? Okay. That was a fine introduction about the process that is new at the University of Texas, tuition and budget. And I think it's very important that students be involved in that process. And I'll say a little bit more about it as it affects the Cockrell School and then how we interact with the university. So we have met with the CTBAC committee, College Tuition Budget Advisory Committee, and given them a financial briefing. And as Roberto said, and I'm going to just say one correction to a clarification Roberto said. This is not a major change in direction of the school. This is continuing the excellence of education and our research programs in school engineering. So I want to talk about them and get these screens to light up here. Okay, so I'll try to not go through this too fast. I tend to talk too fast once I get going, but also not to get to the end so that they can answer questions and have discussion. So our role in a top university of the first class, which is what the Texas Constitution says the University of Texas is to excel in our school of engineering and education, research, and how we impact society. We are a large school of engineering, about 5,400 undergraduate students, about 2,000 graduate students. We are bigger in the School of Engineering than most universities in the United States. We have about 276 faculty now. We're a large program. But as I'll talk about, we're not competing with all the schools in the United States. We're competing with the top schools of engineering to provide the best education, to do the most impactful research, to educate our students so they go out and change society. So we do that through education, our research and creating knowledge, and how we get that knowledge out there. Now, as Roberto has said, and I think you're all aware, these are difficult financial budget times for the state of Texas and the University of Texas, as they are across the United States. We are all living through the worst economic conditions in the United States since the Great Depression, something your great-grandparents, my grandparents, your great-grandparents had to live through. We're not going through this. Now, Texas is doing better than many other states as an economy. There's a lot of advantages, a lot of reasons for that. But the revenue structure in the state of Texas makes it very difficult to address all the needs of the state of Texas, and particularly in higher education. And so what we're seeing in the university is what's been written in the papers since last summer, when the legislature finished their session and passed a budget that reduced the general revenue appropriation, the state appropriation of the University of Texas, by 16.5%. Pretty big reduction. We now have more revenue to the university from tuition than we have from the state. And if you look at historically, that is a big change. You can talk. I talked with alumni that said they remember when tuition was $1,000 or less a year, $500. Well, that was great because they were able to do that because the state provided nearly the full cost of education, educating students at the university. Well, that has changed. And so the budget cuts are real. I'm going to talk about the impact on the School of Engineering and what our plan is to maintain quality, increase the quality, and maintain the value of an engineering degree. But these impacts are real. And while we were going through all the budget questions in the state of Texas and all the questions about coming from the state about what is the role of the university, what is the role of higher education, what do our peers think about what's happening in the University of Texas? So what I have on this table, and I hope you can read it, are the U.S. News World Report rankings of engineering programs. And I think these rankings for engineering are pretty realistic. I think they're pretty accurate about what is the national situation. And so this shows our overall undergraduate ranking is number 11. I'll show in a few minutes our graduate ranking, which is number 8. Then it shows not all, but most of our undergraduate programs that are ranked in their field. So for example, aerospace engineering has typically been ranked 8 or 9 among top aerospace engineering departments. And similarly, you can read the other departments, biomedical engineering, chemical, civil, and environmental are ranked separately, computer engineering, electrical engineering, and mechanical engineering. And so these are our program rankings. These are all done by other peers. So faculty, department chairs, deans, and other schools of engineering across the United States do a ranking. Every year we fill these out. We give some thought to it too, because these are important information. Well, just this week, the 2012 rankings were released by U.S. News World Report. These rankings were based on the surveys that were done in May of this year. Faculty across the country, engineering, department chairs, deans of engineering. Now think about the timeline here. May, we were in the middle of the budget discussions and deliberations of the legislature. The Board of Regents had started task force, boards and task forces, asking good questions, but tough questions, getting a lot of national press. And so, what was the impact on our rankings in 2012? Well, we really saw an unprecedented drop in how peers rank our engineering program. You can see aerospace dropped 4 places, biomedical engineering 3 places. Now they had some oscillation over the years, particularly for a new department. Chemical engineering went back to where it was 3 or 4 years ago. Computer engineering, the lowest ranking in 5 years. Electrical engineering, the lowest ranking in 5 years. Environmental engineering, dropping in ranking from the high that it reached last year. Mechanical engineering about the same. This was an unusually large change of rankings. They usually don't change very much year to year. And it was unusual to see it across the board. Sometimes you'll see it in one department or another. You can see the tables here, how they change. And I believe that the word is getting out across the United States at peer engineering programs of the impacts of the budget and the discussion about what the role of the university is. And that is bad for the quality of our program, and it's going to be bad for the value of your degree. You want your degree from the University of Texas, Cockrell School of Engineering, to increase in value over time. In 10, 20, 30 years or longer, if you're going to have a career, a professional career. And I think this is a very early indication of what the impacts are having on perception. I don't think it's the reality, but it's certainly having an impact on the perception. And eventually, unless we have a plan, it will have an impact on the reality. So what have we been doing in the Cockrell School for these large reductions in general revenue appropriation at the university? Well, we've been working on this for 3 years. This is not news. We had been in a recession since 2007, big crash in 2008. We knew this was coming. So this was something we could plan for in a orderly, strategic way. So in the School of Engineering, over the past 3 years, I won't go through all the details here, we have reduced our operating budget by 17%. This is mostly administrative, reducing information technology. I eliminated an associate dean in my office, an assistant dean in my office. Departments have had to do some reductions in information technology and some administrative support. So we have been trying to maintain our core educational function, access to classes, support for faculty to teach, support for our research mission, and reduce other things that weren't as directly related. And so we reduced 30 staff over 3 years. Big staff reduction. We've had one of the largest staff reductions of the school proportionally at the university. And we have had to cut some of the what we call the supplemental budget, since there's a D in CTBAC on budget. I'll talk a little bit about the budget. Reducing our supplemental budget, which supports TAs in their classes and lecturers for some of the classes where we don't have tenure track faculty. So we've been trying to minimize the impacts of these pretty substantial cuts on students. So here's the summary of our budget. This is really only part of our budget, but this is the important part, particularly for our educational mission and for students. It's the core academic budget. It's about $61 million for this year, 2011, 2012. Be a little bit bigger next year, but not much, almost exactly the same. And half our budget goes to faculty salaries. We are a people business, and faculty are people that do the education and do the research. About 7% is our supplemental budget for TAs and lecturers. This is permanently budgeted, $4.1 million a year. We actually spend, Jerry, about $6.5 million a year. So our permanent budget for TA and lecturers is nowhere near what we need to support TAs and your classes, and support lecturers. So we are always putting money into that from other sources, and that really is a Ponzi scheme, because I've got all this shuffle money around. School operations is everything else that we run in the school, from the student affairs office on the second floor, career counseling, communications, all the things that we use to operate a large school. About 18% of our budget is for operations of our 7 departments, and that's distributed among the departments based on size, number of faculty, number of students. And in our academic core, we have don't need to get into details, we have a revenue that's based on related to our research, indirect costs, that comes to us as a core budget. And that's fully funded from research, the state dollars that go into that, the tuition dollars that go into it. But the way the university accounts it is our core operating budget. I should say that ORU, Organized Research Unit Operations, $3.9 million in operations, that is for running about a $90 million a year research Again, there's no state funding, and there's no tuition dollars. So when I said our operating budget was reduced 17%, it was those last three lines is what we consider our operating budget. And when I said our supplemental expenses were reduced, it was that second line on the supplemental budget. But again, I want to emphasize, we put about $6.5 million a year now into the supplemental budget after and I just said we are a people business. 83% of our core budget is salaries. Faculty, our support staff, administrative staff, the technicians in your laboratory, IT support, advisors, career counselors, those are our staff, teaching assistants, student workers, that is 83% of our budget. So when we talk about budget planning, it really is more people. The other 17%, of course, are important things, computer hardware, networking equipment, copiers, printers, and so on. But it really is a small part of our budget. So there's a lot of talk about efficiency and productivity. Here is a plot, I hope you can read it, that shows the top 10 schools of engineering. This is by the graduate rankings now, number 8. I'll show you that in a minute. And it's the plot is on two axes that talk about our teaching mission, the horizontal axis, the x-axis, as measured by the number of undergraduate students, roughly 5,400, divided by the number of faculty we have. And in this plot, I think this was last year's data, it's about 260 or something like that. Okay. The vertical axis is our research productivity. How much research are faculty doing a year is measured by research expenditure. Okay. You can see it goes from 350,000 to 1.1 million a year on the scale. Each individual faculty member with the average research expenditures. And the 10 dots there are broken up into UT and the other public universities, and then the private. So what do you see here? Well, generally the privates, MIT, Stanford, Caltech, have low student-faculty ratios and high research expenditure per faculty member. The publics generally have higher student-faculty ratios and on average lower. And that makes sense. There is going to be some trade-off between research and teaching. It normally makes sense. You can see UT, we're right in the ballpark in our research productivity. On average, our faculty are doing about $580,000 a sponsored research a year. I think we're off the charts on our student-faculty ratio. We're the highest student-faculty ratio of any top 10 school engineering. But what does that mean? That means classes are bigger, access to classes is probably harder, there's less opportunities for undergraduate research and independent study because we have a lot of students for the number of faculty. And so this is what I consider our competition, and this is what I consider our problem. And so our long-term plan has been to move in a vector towards your upper left. Reduce our undergraduate student-faculty ratio so we can have higher quality education and a larger research mission. Okay. So that has been our long-term plan, despite the budget problems. Here's another way of looking at this. This lists now the top 10 schools of engineering, measured by the graduate program. UT Austin is number 8, our engineering program. Now their number of full-time tenure track faculty, we report to U.S. News and World Report, including computer science, because that's the rules of how we report. But we actually have 253 full-time faculty this last year's data was in this. And you can see, by far, we have the largest student-faculty ratio. I consider that a problem. I consider that saying we cannot provide the same quality of education as our peers are, whether it's University of Michigan, University of Illinois, Georgia Tech, Berkeley, because we don't have enough faculty. Now, the faculty we do have do a lot of teaching. And I bet if I compare, I don't have this data for the other schools, I bet if we compare it with our peer schools, we have at 71% of all our undergraduate classes taught by full-time faculty. I bet we beat the other schools. even though we have the highest student-faculty ratio, I bet we have one of the highest ratios or percentages of undergraduate classes, engineering classes, taught by full-time faculty, not taught by lecturers and adjuncts. We could solve the problem by not hiring faculty and hiring a lot of lecturers. But I don't think that would give you the same quality of education. In fact, I know it would give you the same quality. So we do not want to take the cut rate approach that many other universities are taking. Not our peers, but many other universities. Now, we do have a problem in the School of Engineering, and this will be a related but separate and longer deliberation. I realize this is a bit of I'm violating now all the rules of PowerPoint, putting up a complicated bar chart. But what this is showing is retention rates of undergraduate students and graduation rates of undergraduate students in engineering. And so I won't go through all the details, but here let me just focus on graduation. What this bar is saying is that freshmen that enter engineering, only 31% graduated 4 years with an engineering degree. That's a low percentage. Freshmen who enter engineering, 53% graduate with an engineering degree by the sixth year. Well, when my parents dropped me off at college a long time ago, 35 years ago, I said, see you, Mom and Dad, in 6 years. They would say, what are you talking about? College is 4 years. So we have low graduation rates. Now, of students who enter engineering and graduate with a UT degree, start in engineering, decide to change majors for whatever reason, it's a little bit better, right? So of students who start in engineering and graduate in 4 years with a UT degree, it's 40%. It goes up to 76% in 6 years. These are low graduation rates compared to top public universities. Now, President Powers has identified this as a high priority. In fact, just this afternoon I came from the State University message. He has identified a high priority, improving the graduation rates at UT. And I think we need to do it in engineering. That 31% is less than half the graduation rate of peer engineering schools. Berkeley, Michigan, Purdue, Georgia Tech. It's about half. Now, this is a separate discussion of why is this? What are the ways of improving it? Certainly, student input on this is important. We'll be doing more of this, but I think a factor of the low graduation rate is our high student-faculty ratio. Again, this issue of access to classes, working, particularly in engineering, where you should get to advanced classes with design projects. Having that small class is very important to making timely progress. So what are our needs for improving the educational quality? So we have gone, we'll hear from Associate Dean Spike Kell is here, who's my real budget person in the School of Engineering. We've done a thorough analysis of what we think we need to improve the educational quality, trying to be as realistic as possible, recognizing that funding is tight. And so this is a very high-level view of what those needs are and the revenue that's needed. These are annual revenue to address them. So we need more funding for TAs and lecturers. As I said, we're spending a lot more than is permanently budgeted. We need to put more in the permanent budget so we can add that increment. And that is important. And we estimate that at $1.2 million. Remember, the budgeted amount is only about $4 million. We need to continue to reduce the student-faculty ratio by increasing the number of faculty. We've been on a path to do that over the past 3 years. On average, about 4 new faculty members a year has been our goal. Net increase. To continue that very modest net increase in a school this big and have some impact, we estimate that at $2.8 billion a year, to hire 4 faculty. We are creating a Center for Engineering Education. This is an outgrowth of the UTeach program at engineering, called UTeach Engineering. because there are a lot of exciting things that are taking place in engineering education and pedagogy and new technology. We need a mechanism, and of course we need support to be able to do that. We estimate that at $600,000 a year. And we are in a very competitive environment with faculty and with staff. I don't like it when a faculty member leaves for University of Illinois or Stanford or MIT. And you imagine our faculty are highly accomplished, talented individuals, and they are movable. And we deal with that every day. Now we try to rate some of the other schools too in the process. That's what we're able to do is for get some of those MIT and Stanford faculty who aren't happy in Cambridge or Palo Alto. So we're trying to do the same thing, but we need to make sure we keep our best faculty here in a very competitive environment. So this is what we consider as our needs to continue the growth and the excellence of the school. So that's $6.6 million a year, a little bit over 10% of our core academic budget. Remember, the core academic budget is $61 million a year. So this is not a small increment, it's 10%. What about trying to raise that by further cuts? Well, we have cut everything but faculty salaries by 17%. We feel we are now at the bone. We cut out a lot of fat. Some of the fat hurt a little bit. Some of it was not very painful. But right now we're at the bone. And any further cuts will be more like an amputation. We really have to stop doing some very, very important things, which will be detrimental to the quality of our program. So that's not really possible without substantially starting to reduce the value of your engineering. So what are the revenue sources then if we can't increase, if we can't do this through cuts? Well, state general revenue. I don't think that next biennium is going to be any better than current. In fact, it's very likely that we think 2 years ahead in the next budget cycle, there may be another reduction in state funding on top of these 16%. We have very generous donors to the School of Engineering. We look at the history of the School of Engineering starting in the late 70s and through the 80s. Its reputation really accelerated through very generous endowments to support hiring the best faculty, student fellowships, student scholarships. But donors don't want to give money to backfill cuts in state funding. They're motivated by supporting students in scholarships and fellowships. They're motivated by new areas of inquiry, new impacts, which is biomedical engineering is really hot these days, that will affect people's lives. That's what donors are interested in. And I try to sell them on that as much as possible. But if I say, well, the state just cut our budget $3 million, can you help out a little bit? It doesn't go anywhere. And so what does that leave? That leaves tuition increases. It's hard for families. I've had 2 daughters go through college. I know what it's like for families to pay for tuition. But this is, unfortunately, I think it's unfortunate, a trend in the United States that as public funding for public education has decreased to maintain quality, the costs are being transferred to students and families. Now we try to do that as modestly as possible, as efficiently as possible. But the kind of tuition increases that have taken place in Texas, 3.95% this year, 3.95% last year. Fairly modest increases. I think a couple of years ago there might have been an 8% increase. Look at what's happening around the country. California's had about a 30% increase. University of Washington is over a 10% increase. So you see massive increases taking place in states that are reducing state appropriation. That's not going to happen in Texas, so these are going to be fairly modest increases. Now, what's the process for doing this? Roberto briefly mentioned it. At the university level, there is TPAC, Tuition Policy Advisory Committee. What they are going to do is create a proposal. Let me stop there and say part of the input to TPAC is exactly what Roberto talked about. this committee, your committee representing the students, college tuition and budget advisory committee. Each college and school has one of these committees. And they're going to be providing input to this TPAC proposal about what are the needs of each school. That TPAC proposal is TPAC committee is going to be working with the provost and other university administrators, deans, students, faculty, to create a proposal to President Powers for tuition increase at some point at the end of the semester. President Powers then will take that TPAC recommendation for a tuition increase and submit a request for tuition increase to the University of Texas system. The University of Texas system will decide about our proposal, the University of Texas Austin's proposal, and then finally submit a recommendation to the UT System Board of Regents. The UT System Board of Regents will vote on a tuition increase or no tuition increase, that's their decision, in March of next year. So we're at the very beginning of this very consultative process among the schools and colleges with the students through the university level and the TPAC process. And so I'm preparing a proposal from our school to TPAC. I would like CTBAC's input. It's very important in this input. A tuition increase is the only mechanism to provide these needed resources for our highest priorities to maintain our educational quality. Now, what does $6.6 million mean in terms of a tuition increase? Well, before I get to that, let's talk about tuition. So here's a bar chart of the top 10 public universities, schools of engineering that are in the top 10. And you can see UT Austin here off on the right bar. Now, Georgia Tech is the lowest cost. These are fees and tuition per semester at these public universities. Georgia Tech is low cost. Now, they are having some tuition increases, but Georgia Tech is the only engineering school in the state of Georgia. Very few public universities, top public universities in Georgia. Georgia Tech is the best, and it gets a lot of state funding. And of course, it draws a lot of out-of-state students from particularly the Southeast. So they have a much higher out-of-state tuition. Now, other than Georgia Tech, we are the lowest. Okay. You can see Illinois. Actually, let me get to Illinois in a minute. Illinois. Berkeley, 70, it's a huge increase, it's 7,200 per semester. You can see Michigan here, and these are all in-state tuitions, out-of-state, so off the graph here. These are all in-state tuitions. You see Berkeley, 7,200 a semester. You go to Michigan as a Michigan resident. Your first 2 years, the tuition is 6,600, and then it goes up your last 2 years, 8,600. You see there's a big difference between lower division and upper division tuition. Now, Illinois and Purdue have a different type of tuition system. The red bar there is the general tuition for the university. So Illinois, the general tuition is $6,220. But if you're in engineering, they have a higher tuition. It's called a differential tuition. It pays $7,900 a semester. And Purdue is the same situation with a higher number. But you can see for engineering students at Purdue, $5,300. I put Purdue also in the same category as Georgia Tech. It's the only school of engineering in the state of Indiana, and they draw students from across the country, but especially in the Midwest. And in fact, all of these schools, with the exception of Austin, UT Austin, have much higher out-of-state students. In fact, Berkeley is going up to 20% out-of-state. At the University of Texas, we have about 92% in residents. In fact, we can't go below 90%. So a lot of these other public universities are raising revenue by attracting students from out of state. So I call it arbitrage of students, trading students with each other to raise revenue. Okay, so we're at 5,100 now. So what would be needed to meet the Cockrell School needs if the tuition was just in engineering? Well, this is it. So we would need in the beginning of the next academic year, 12-2015, to increase tuition $250 a semester. So a total increase of $500 for a year, a little under 5% increase. That would generate $3.25 million for 2012, 2013, halfway to the goal. We did the same kind of increase the subsequent year, 2013, 2014, another $250. So total increase from where we are now, $500 a semester, a little under a 10% increase over a 2-year period. That would generate another $3.25 million additional the second year. And non-resident would go up about twice as much. And so this type of tuition increase, roughly 5% a year, 2 years in a row, would meet what these needs are in terms of 6.5 million. So that is the scale of the kind of tuition increase that would be needed to meet these high priority needs for college students. So that's my summary. Context of higher education in Texas, where we are in the budget, the School of Engineering, what the opportunities are, what our needs are to increase faculty, TA support, to reduce student-faculty ratios, what the tuition picture is among our peers, and what tuition increase would be needed to meet those needs. So that's my briefing, and I'm glad to open it up for questions or discussion. Yes?
To increase the graduation rates, you said that the graduation rate is pretty low for
Right.
engineering. So I would like to talk to you about that. Not right now, maybe. But I have some suggestions because the school I went to in India, it's one of the top schools in India, but it's not so well known worldwide. But the graduation rate in my college was at least 95%.
That's not surprising. Because again, at peer schools, I said the 41% is less than half of what it is of public schools. So 80% is not unheard of.
I think that has got more to do with the way engineering course requirements are structured rather than because a lot of flexibility is provided to the students here, which is really good in certain ways, but also that kind of leads to the point where students don't graduate in time.
Well, it's a very important issue. There's a lot of complicated things.
Yes.
It's rate also, number of credit hours taken, semester credit hours taken each semester, number of semester hours that students graduate with. We have some distributions that show about a quarter of students graduate with 170 units or more. 128 units requirement. So there are a lot of reasons about rate and total number of units. And there's certainly questions when you're bringing out the structure of the curriculum. We need to make sure we don't have barriers to normal progress that slow students down. So those are all important issues related to graduation rates. Yes?
So you said that as-state tuition is going to, like, the differential increase is going to be twice on the in-state residents' tuition increase, right? So being an as-state student myself, I am fully aware of how much more I'm paying than an in-state student. I just don't see why it's justified that I would have to pay twice the amount that, like, they would have to pay. Instead of increasing my $250, I have to pay $500 when my tuition is already so much higher than theirs.
Well, so a couple of points. Well, first of all, the percentage increase is roughly the same because the out-of-state tuition is roughly double.
Yeah.
So the percentage increase is roughly the same. All public institutions work this way. They're basically subsidized students and unsubsidized students. The definition of being subsidized is, are you your parent or resident of the state? Theory being they pay taxes into the state, tax revenue going to support the education. Out of state, haven't paid taxes in the state, and so you don't get the benefit of having paid taxes over many years to support the higher education. Every state, public university
but I just feel like by increasing the financial burden on out-of-state students, it only discourages someone from California or like Florida, Indiana to leave their home state where they can go to Purdue, Georgia Tech, Berkeley, Stanford, and UT. And isn't that kind of intuitive because UT does get a lot of its revenue from out-of-state students because we pay so much more.
Well, it's actually, percentage-wise, it's a small amount because we have only about 8% of our students are from out of state. So it's actually, in terms of just looking at the revenue side of it, it's actually a pretty small proportion. Purdue, my guess is they've got at least a quarter of their students, 3 times as many students on a percentage basis from out of state. And their out-of-state tuition is, I'm sure, higher than ours. So actually, if we compare out-of-state tuition, I think we still look like pretty good numbers. Now, is that enough to have something from Indiana or from Texas? That's a lot. And I gotta say, politically, we're not gonna get much sympathy from Texas legislators that we've got to give a break to out-of-state students in Texas. They think, their legislators don't think we should have any out-of-state students. All for Texas. So I don't agree with it, though, but you know, we live in a political environment too.
So in other words, you are not concerned about, you don't think there is a chance that the number of out-state students will decrease because the percentage increase in the tuition is not as much?
I don't. I think that's going to be a second order.
It wouldn't be important at all.
The reality is because of state law, we have such a relatively small percentage of out-of-state students. It's not going to, I don't think it's going to make a difference.
Oh, what is the reason for the 90% law? Is there
I'm sure all of you have been Texas residents longer than I have, so I don't know. It's all, you know, what's the reason for the top 10% law? So this is in the same law that governs admissions,
Okay.
10%. So I would encourage you as a voter to ask your representative or your senator for that right.
Okay.
Yes.
I have a statement and a question. My statement is that, you know, while I understand that a tuition increase might not be very popular, I feel that you've made a very compelling argument. And for me, it boils down to the fact that I attended a top 10 engineering school, and I want it to be a top 10 engineering school when I graduate. I want it to stay in that bracket 20 years from now. And if this is what it takes to ensure that happens, then you know, I'm going to be on board with it. And my question is that has any sort of advertisement been considered as a possible alternative revenue source? I know that we've got several buildings that aren't named anything in particular. I know there's a lot of building spaces. You know, advertising may not be very popular, and there might be some issues with things like co-sponsorship, but I don't know how much revenue it might bring in.
So you know, that's an interesting question, and my communications staff has brought up the same thing. It's UT brand. We have a Longhorn brand. Generates a lot of revenue. Longhorn's trademark. I'll get sued if I try to use it. I'll pay a royalty. But can we brand school? And there we've got to be careful because we are a public institution, and I know there is some great concern about sort of selling public spaces to companies because it brings in reputation companies, endorsement, conflict of interest. So there are a lot of complicated issues.
Too many hurdles.
So and if you probably, and we haven't done a financial analysis, but is there a market for it? We don't know. I mean, and my guess is there's probably not a $6 million a year market for it. And so with all the legal and policy issues that brings up, it's now, that being said, we do work with many companies for sponsorship of student programs and events. Our Women in Engineering program has substantial corporate contributions. The Back to Texas event we had for new students, sponsored by BP. So we work with a lot of very good companies for sponsoring specific events. Now, does that mean we put a neon sign around the top of the building advertising the company? show up on a core budget that is actually fairly substantial. But I want to thank you for your comment. You said it better than I can. It really goes to what is the long-term value of the UT engineering degree. We all graduate from UT, I hope, right? This is not a small portion of the students that are going to graduate from engineering. And you're going to have an engineering degree, and 30 years from now, you'll be successful. You'll hopefully look back and say, I got my start at UT where I got a great education, high quality. But then you have to explain to people why is UT engineering ranked 40th in the nation. So that's not the trend we want to be on. So I think that's what you're saying. That's a very important point. That really is taking along.
Seeing that we're like in the struggle for financing right now, and that we committed, because I remember last year you telling us about how there's that huge construction project going on with the engineering part. I feel like a lot of students are going to be wondering if we're in this huge budget crisis and our tuition is going to increase by a lot of money. What was the whole point of us spending a lot of money on this huge new brand new building and this new engineering area when we much rather just have our tuitions stay the way it is now and just maybe live with moderate changes instead of these huge, drastic, new renovations?
Well, that's a good point. And so the proposal for what our needs are to be addressed by tuition has nothing to do with the facilities. Our source of funding of facilities is either constitutionally can't use it for hiring faculty. So the Board of Regents just approved $105 million for HUF bonds for a very important decision that the Board of Regents is an important project that needs to go ahead. Constitutionally, HUF bonds can only be used for construction of facilities. The Regents can't take that money and say, times are tough, let's use the HUF funds to hire faculty. So, a big part of it is going to be philanthropy. I said earlier, I can't get, it'd be a hard sell to tell donors, we need $100 million from you, which is our goal for the building, because we've lost all the state revenue. They can tell you it doesn't sell. That's not how they want it. That's not how they do it for them. If I tell them that we have this facility that will improve the way we teach the laboratories, improve our ability to do research in new ways, help attract the best students who might be great facilities and peer schools. Certainly help attract the best faculty who are really smart. Their first question when they come to UT and look at the interview them is, where's my lab? And show the basement of Woolrich, a hard sell there. So we need the facilities to be able to do all that. And I agree completely, student tuition should not go to that. Tuition should go to the people that provide the education. And we look at other funding mechanisms to provide the facilities to do that. Yes?
So one of the things that you wanted to do was to reduce student faculty ratio. One of the ways you said you would achieve it was to hire more faculty, but what about not trying to increase the student population involved? Because I know the School of Engineering is very, for example, I'm a mechanical engineer in my program. When we were talking in orientation, it says that we're about the top 4% of our classes. So the UT engineering program is one of the highest in the nation, so why not make it more competitive to get into? Maybe not necessarily increase so much in the student population, have the widest students, and make that allow for the number of faculty not to be as great.
So, of course, the student faculty ratio is a ratio, so you can work on the denominator or the numerator. So let's talk about the numerator. So first of all, we are not planning on increasing the number of graduate students for those reasons. On the other hand, the state of Texas and the nation needs more engineers and high quality education. we are a public university, and we're one of the largest public schools in engineering. So I feel we have a responsibility to not reduce the number of students. Now, 5,400 actually is a little high. We are bringing that down a little bit. Our sort of the planning for the Cockrell School for a long time has been about 5,100. And we've had some problems with some issues about how we stay within that limit. So we really are above where our basis should be. But I don't see us going below that because there's such demand for engineers. On the other hand, if we can increase the graduation rate requirements from overall 50%, get that up to 70 or 80%, we can graduate more engineers without admitting more students. So I think that's a better goal that's consistent with our public mission as one of the largest and most important schools.
Going to the same thing you were saying, the goals, there was a higher percentage of students who started as engineers and moved to another program and graduated. Going back to what I said, if the program became more stringent, maybe those students that decide to get into another program might be swayed early on.
Yeah, that could be. And we also have to understand that within state law, under the top 10% rule, there's a mandatory admission. You said the top 4%. Well, that's top 4% based on class rank in high school. And is that the best measure for understanding students who will be successful in the future? That's a good discussion to have. But I don't see us reducing the number of students. And again, from a revenue point of view, that be chasing your tail in the other direction. So we'd still, basically, we'd still have the same goal. Any other questions? Yes, Roberto.
I got a question. Touching on philanthropy, when donors call in, or I guess we call donors.
Yeah, that's usually the way it works.
And I guess they have to say where the money goes. What happens to money that's over allocated to departments?
Well, that's a good question. So you're right, donors have a say, but they're writing the check. And this is an issue in higher education. And the challenge is to work with our very generous donors to help align their philanthropic interests with what their needs are. And we usually do a pretty good job of that. But are we overweight in one area versus another? That doesn't really happen. There are always needs we meet. Almost always needs we meet based on individuals. But in the end, they're philanthropists of all shots. Yes.
I just wanted to clarify, is the tuition increase that you're proposing, is that the sole increase, or is that on top of the regular slight increase that you've been seeing in the past few years?
Well, that is a really good question. We don't know at this point. We're at the very beginning of the TPAC process, and so we have to see how that unfolds. My goal here, in talking with you all and CTBAC, is to convey to the TPAC process what our needs are. Now, how that will translate to a general tuition increase, which this year is 3.95%, based on the decision that were made 2 years ago in the regions, whether it will be some percentage, and the university will be getting guidance about what are the range that we consider about the regions. So whether it fits within that, entertain proposals for different tuition levels in different schools, we don't know yet. My role here is to identify the top priorities, being as modest as possible, recognizing that any of those priorities translate to tuition increases and what that would mean for the school district.
So this is a proposal for what the school engineering needs are, but for tuition is not only like what we pay as a big straight engineering, it goes into the engineering.
make sure in the budgeting and tuition process that is now just getting underway, our needs, the 6.6 million, is clearly stated, and what the rationale is, and what the student input is on those funds. And we will see how that translates to a recommendation from the university, or request from the university for tuition increase, and how that translates to whatever tuition increase is in terms of allocation. I don't know the answer. My goal here is, what are the highest priority needs, being modest in understanding the financial pressures, and getting student input, getting faculty input, a faculty meeting on Monday, the same thing, and convey that in as clear a way as possible to the tuition policy project. Yes?
I definitely agree that we should really focus on the quality of professors, like you said, and the faculty. But what are the faculty's feelings toward like the quality of education here? What is their perspective on the subject of the like you said that you would focus on more of like making sure we have the best faculty in the nation. But as of now, what is keeping them here in this focus for engineering? How would you keep them here for now?
Well, so you've asked two questions. So what are the faculty's views about the quality of education? And the second question, what's keeping them? I think what's keeping them here is we've got a great university. It's an exciting place. There are lots of opportunities at the university, a large university, lots of collaborations that take place. Texas is a good state to live in for an engineer. There's companies here, the industry is here. And Austin's a nice place to live. Austin is a real asset to recruiting and entertainment. And there's great loyalty to the university. We'll try to keep it. So all those factors. And we have, well, so that's my segue. And so now that really segues into your first question, what's quality education? I think one of the things, and at UT is, among our faculty, education is really highly valued. In fact, for the most part, I know all have exceptions here and there, are excellent teachers. Many are great teachers. And I've said this before, I've either studied at, worked at, or collaborated at nearly every one of those 10 universities on 10 schools of engineering. And I think UT has, among those schools, has one of the best focuses on education, quality education, quality teaching. And that's very attractive for faculty. And we get great students here. And so I think those are all very positive factors. This is why I'm so concerned about the financial aspects is that will eventually start to erode all of those factors. President Powers said something really well at his speech earlier this afternoon. He said, the Quality University of Texas has been built over 30 or 40 years. Go back in history of the university. And it's been built over 30 or 40 years, thimbleful by thimbleful. One step at a time, getting that faculty number from MIT. Getting great students there, starting these programs, improving our education, thimbleful by thimbleful. That quality can be lost in buckets. And this is why these decisions are so important. We don't want buckets of quality. Yes?
There's always been this historical perception between the purpose of the university between being research or education. And in these budget cuts / increases over time, is your fundamental mixture of these two changing, or is that trying to stay constant?
I think we need it to keep constant because I think that's a unique attribute of the kind of schools that we're there are over 3,000 colleges and universities in the United States. Large country, large population, lots of diversity in types of schools and types of education. As I've said before to my advisory board, China is trying to copy what we do in our 100 best universities as research and education institutions, recognizing students are part of the research. Research only takes place with students. China is not trying to copy our K-12 system. They're trying to copy the top tier of research universities in the United States. And I think the state of Texas deserves at least one of these. That's Texas. So our goal and our plan is to continue that model because I think it's a very successful model. And I don't want to use names. I've got a faculty member told me, just an example of that they have a research group of about 10 or so graduate students. But the ideas for that research group are coming from a junior in this class. You can only have that kind of dynamic at a university like the University of Texas. Now, there are other universities, I don't want to name names, but good teaching colleges, and those are important too. We need that diversity, that ability to educate large numbers of students at lower cost, no question, at lower cost. But we also need universities like the University of Texas that have that tradition. Yes?
I don't know if this is necessarily, if there's a financial correlation with this, but I'd like to ask in response to a lot of the graduation rates and retaining first-year students into the engineering program who come in. At least from my own experience, I've noticed that a lot of our core classes are intermixed with a lot of classes that are in the natural science department, such as your calculus courses and physics and bio and chemistry courses. And those are typically, at least from the ones I've had, they're very big. And so that student to faculty ratio, I understand is very important. But in response to some of the quality, because of that quality, it sometimes deters, or I've spoken to some students who say it deters them from wanting to stay in engineering, but those are not necessarily engineering classes. Is there any
we're certainly aware of that.
Yeah, is that something that is, or if whether or not the faculty that do teach those courses do their research get, is their research and tenure tied with this Cockrell School of Engineering, or
Well, so clearly the foundational math and science courses are important for engineering. All of those courses are important for the education of engineers and also for retention. So there's clearly, that's an important factor. We're certainly aware of it, and it's certainly something that we have identified as one of the things to look at in graduation and retention. Now, there is a interesting project taking place here at UT called the Course Transformation Project, which is looking at not just making the classes smaller and focused, but also, really fundamentally looking at the curriculum, the pedagogy of how it's taught. Students learn in different ways. 500-seat lecture is not necessarily the best way to do it. So using technology to support better pedagogy and better outcomes in classes. So we are certainly working on that, and that is a problem. And that's a problem at UT and every other. I went to Cornell private school. I had a 500-person chemistry class. And that's been the structure for a long time. And I think we need to change that. This course transformation program is just intended to do that.
well, in regards to the faculty that do work under the natural science department or are considered the professors under there, is there a financial tie between the two? Because since we both
we're laughing about that. It's a problem. It's a work in progress.
Yeah, because natural science, we're very closely affiliated with them,
Yes.
especially with STEM programs.
Absolutely.
And
we need to work together.
Yeah.
Yeah, because chemistry major, huge major, biology, huge major, they've got the same issues with their foundation classes that we do. So we understand there's a huge problem. We're sort of chuckling about the flag hands. There's some things that need to be addressed. Yes?
Is there a possibility of having classes, foundation, basic science foundation classes for engineers specifically, instead of making them
Well, I
have
think
classes?
they are specifically for engineers, but they're not taught by engineering faculty. They're taught by physics or mathematics. They are for engineers.
So those, not all students attend music, only people from engineering classes. Still, it's 500.
Still. So that's certainly one of the factors in the initial analysis. This is just getting started at the university level. It's important at the university level because of issues like this, and also the school. Well, you have asked great questions. They really go to the heart of the matter, from facilities to what's the value of the degree, to the quality of the instruction, student-faculty ratio. So I really appreciate your attending this. I know you've got classes, I'll take classes, making progress towards your degree, and I don't want to slow you down with this, but I really do appreciate your input and really good questions. Excellent discussion. Roberto, you want to finish up with any closing comments?
Right. Again, very good questions, guys. Thank you very much for coming. We're going to try and represent you guys with whatever concerns you have on this budget, tuition, anything you want to talk about. You can always email me or email SEC and we'll try and voice our questions through the dean's office. And so this will happen throughout the year as we try to come up with a proposal. Thank you all for coming. I want to thank Dean Memphis and Dr. Cockrell again for being down here.
Thank you.